Wilbur's son Milo characterizes it this way: Vern built the machine and Wilbur built the company. Both men got their hands grimy in the shop in the early days, and both were intricately involved in managing their rapidly growing company. But fundamentally, Vern was the mechanic, and Wilbur was the marketing-savvy salesman. The differences which complemented each other so well in the business were evident to their sister Viola at the time the 7 siblings in the Shield family were growing up on the farm. In a family reminiscence, Viola remembered Vern as the one with gears and wheels in his head, whose whole interest was in machines. His curiosity once led him to dismantle the engine in their 1916 Buick. Vern had the parts spread out on the floor when his surprised father showed up looking for a ride to town. Wilbur, on the other hand, was the free spirit remembered by his sister as the one who never brought any homework to study but seemed to know all the answers. Never used a bridle on his pony, just pulled on her mane to tell her which direction to go. The machines which Wilbur, Vern, and their helpers assembled at the quarry from existing parts were the prototype for the M47, the first in a series of production models which would follow. They were manufactured in a plant which the Shield brothers constructed in Waverly in 1946 to keep up with the demand for Shield Bantam products. Ownership, style, mode of operation, and product line have changed radically. But 60 years after Bantam No. 1 was sold, the Waverly industry created by the Shield brothers continues as a major player in the global construction industry. The cranes produced at the Waverly plant today by the Terex company have a reputation grounded in the same principles of innovation and product quality which Shield Bantam established. This is a story about 2 brothers, Wilbur and Vern Shield, and remarkable achievement with their small but scrappy Bantam, a machine for its time. The beginnings of this story of the Limestone boys and their small but scrappy Bantam goes back to their rural roots in the 19th century. Fred and Emma Shield left Benton County and settled on land near Haywarden in northwest Iowa. In 1902, Vern, their 4th child, was the first born in this house they built on their Sioux County farm. Wilbur, born 7 years later, was next to the youngest of their 7 children. On that pioneer farm, powered by horses and manual labor, the brothers learned the discipline of hard work, which began before breakfast.
We didn't have breakfast until we milked 2 or 3 cows and fed the hogs and named it. You had your chores to do and before you sat down for breakfast. And so it was up early in the mornings, and that was just part of living.
Besides the work, the children's lives revolved around the Mount Joy Church of God, located just half a mile from the farmstead, the one-room school they attended, and music, which was an important part of family life. In 1919, the Shields decided to sell the Iowa farm and relocate in Minnesota, where Fred established a prosperous farming operation. A decade later, that decision would crash around them.
Moving there in 1919, approximately, or 18. Then, of course, the crash come along in 29. And, of course, then we lost everything because the reason, I think, at that particular time, the bankers, when Dad sold the farm in Sioux County, the bankers kept Dad's signature on the bank in Sioux County, guaranteeing their payments. Well, no way that he could keep both Minnesota land going and Iowa land going, so it just had to let everything go back.
So, at ages 60 and 57, Fred and Emma look into the face of adversity and start over. In Iowa, on this land near the Cedar River north of Waverly. Vern, now 27, joins his father on the farm and rents another 80 acres. The phrase, "I did what I could with what I had," is attributed to Vern in a family history. But it was the creed which drove both brothers in the creation of a machine and a business that would mechanize work largely done by hand in the 1930s, a revolutionary change. It started in a quarry owned by the Shields' neighbor, Charlie Colburn. He was in the business of mining and crushing limestone, which was spread on farmland to improve productivity, a business that was not going well in the depression-racked farm economy of the times. However, the Shield brothers saw possibilities and decided to take over and operate the quarry. Waverly attorney Bill Engelbrecht, longtime friend and legal advisor, recalls that Vern was not able to obtain financing from local banks to upgrade quarry equipment, which kept breaking down.
Anchor Jewell, Ralph Jewell's dad, a farmer north of Waverly, loaned them enough money to buy a commercial crusher on the strength of Howard Roach at Plainfield buying the crushed lime for agricultural purposes. And that's how Vern got started.
The site where the Shield enterprise started is now largely filled in and produces alfalfa. But back in the 30s, after a hard day's work at the quarry, Wilbur recalls drawing on their musical heritage as entertainers. The brothers appeared at community events and on the radio, promoting their business as the Limestone Boys.
We couldn't advertise, or otherwise we'd had to pay. Well, we didn't have money to pay for anything, but they called us the Limestone Boys, and we just left it go at that. We got a little advertising.
However, their celebrity was not enough to overcome the tough times, and business was slow at the quarry. Wilbur decided to take his fortunes to Indiana. After being laid off from a factory job, he started a wholesale produce business, using a rented truck, his natural sales ability, and the Shield philosophy: do what you can with what you have.
They didn't hardly know a potato from another potato. Didn't realize there was that many varieties of potatoes, but I sold them and made at least I got my money back.
Wilbur did better than that. He broadened the potato business into a successful fruit and vegetable wholesale enterprise, serving 20 grocery stores. Back in Iowa, Vern plugged away at the limestone business, which received a shot in the arm from an FDR New Deal program, which offered payments to farmers to improve their land. Trucks lined up as orders for lime jumped from 5 to 150 tons, and it was straining operations at the quarry where most of the work was hand labor.
During this time, though, Vern built a small machine for the quarry. He needed a small drag line, and so he got a few used parts together.
That was Bantam number 1, now preserved in the Shield Museum in Waverly. Vern fashioned a full 360-degree revolving drag line, scaled to fit his needs. He used what he had: a hoist salvaged from a junkyard, powered by a Ford Model A engine. The machine rotated on a turntable adapted from a Hartpart tractor drive gear, and it was mounted on a used International truck which had 100,000 miles on it. The genius of Vern's invention can be seen in this demonstration of Calvin Koiker's restored 1947 Bantam with Wilbur at the controls. It was its capability to mechanize operations which were being done by hand. With 2 or 3 bites, the Bantam could load a truck in a fraction of the time it took men working with shovels to do it. A gravel pit operator from neighboring Denver saw the first Shield machine and bought it. The second was snapped up by the operator at Sumner, and that generated a new idea.
And that gave us the idea, well, there was hundreds of these small gravel pits in Iowa, and we thought, well, they all need a small machine. They have no use for a large. There was larger machines built, right, but they had no use for a big machine, a lot more expensive.
It was a pivotal moment in the development of the Bantam concept into the Shield Bantam Company. It was 1943. Wilbur gave up his wholesale business in Indiana, moved back to Waverly, and the brothers started building Bantams in a small barn which still stands at the quarry site.
When we started, and Mr. Holmes, who was a welder, and my brother Vern and I, we built 9 machines the first year we started in this barn. We had to move the cows and whatever else was in the barn, we took over, and this was our factory. At that time, we sold them as fast as we could build them.
The next year, they let the cows back in the barn and moved the operation to a new building they constructed at the site. These sketches, hand-drawn by Melvin Holmes, the brothers' first employee, guided assembly of the machines created there. They sold 29 the first year, priced at around $3,000 a unit, and 90-some the year after that. The idea of the small, versatile machine was rapidly catching on.
Just grew that fast, which really to keep up with that and get equipment, men, space to do those things, it just required working around the clock. We built a fairly good-sized building out there at the quarry, but of course, as production increased, that building soon was too small.
Their conclusion that the building was too small to handle the demand led the brothers into a bold new venture. It would play a key role in America's post-war construction boom and have a major impact on the Waverly community.